across the Arab region and Africa. I've been very involved in that space in the part of the world where I come from. And I think it's been really, I was just thinking after this last roundtable with venture capitalists, it was a little bit like deja vu. We all go through the same thing, but we're at different stages in the journey. So Uzbekistan is reminding me a little bit of what Egypt was like, 15, or maybe even over a little less, or a little more than 10 years ago. But I keep thinking that, you have a lot of political will here that we didn't have. So in my mind, I keep thinking maybe Uzbekistan will move much faster than we did, because our ecosystem was being driven by the sheer will of entrepreneurs and people in the private sector who really wanted to see the ecosystem work better, and the government had no interest. Uzbekistan's the opposite.
Now, a bit over 10 years, that worries me a bit.
Maybe 12 years. What year is it, 2026?
I was talking to a friend of mine
years.
A couple of years ago, and he was talking about Kazakhstan, because we always, have this very healthy competition with Kazakhstan in many areas, especially in IT. We weren't talking about IT, but economic development level in general. And somebody said, it was more of a question, how far behind are we from Kazakhstan? And my friend said, how can we say that a country is behind the other one if they both are moving in different directions? Is that the case, or is it not in this? When we talk
I don't know
about
that comparison is always useful in the case of innovation ecosystems. I think you are where you are.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to decide where you want to be. And I think every country needs to decide what they want their comparative advantage to be, what kind of innovations they want to produce. And I'm not sure the constant comparison is always helpful, but I think, but I do think there are like ingredients to what makes an ecosystem work well.
Yeah.
And I think those are the things that we should focus on. But, it's hard to say, is this one way better than, is Kazakhstan way better than Uzbekistan, or is Uzbekistan? I think the better question to ask is, what are the ingredients that exist that you can capitalize on to build a strong ecosystem for this country? Yeah.
I have a couple of questions piled up on that. But before we get to systems and policies, I want to start with something more human. Can you think about any startup? I mean, you've worked with many, many countries and many entrepreneurs, so many startups being founded. Can you think of any startup that appeared out of, not nowhere, unexpected place and managed to scale globally? And if you ever pondered over reasons why and what made that possible, what would it be?
I've been thinking about that question since it was sent to me. It's so hard to think about, what is a startup that really stood out for me? And I think there's one startup that I think really impacted me on a personal level, and it's a company called Proteinia. It was born out of the University of Alexandria in Egypt. And these two co-founders were trying to use proteins from insects to cure cancer, and nobody was interested in investing in them in Egypt because it wasn't something that had already been proven.
Yeah.
And our risk capital, I would say the risk capital space in Egypt is still conservative. We don't take risks. But these two co-founders were extremely ambitious and extremely determined. And they ended up in my office in Cambridge at MIT.
Okay.
And it was really interesting for me to hear their story, because they said to me, I said, oh, who did you raise money from in Egypt? They said, actually nobody, except for one person who didn't even invest in them through his fund. He invested in them personally because he didn't want to take the risk as a fund. And they ended up coming to Cambridge, Massachusetts, because they were able to raise money from Google Ventures. They were able to raise money from local venture capitalists in Cambridge. And right now, they are at a place where they're getting FDA approval and they're about to go to market. They're not global yet, but they will be. And why this company is interesting for me, it's because we have so many hidden gems in our countries, but we don't bother to get out of our way to find them and to really take the time to invest in things that are out of the beaten path, as we say.
Yeah.
Because actually, we're just trying to follow what we are being told to follow of the latest trends. And, you know, deep tech is never about trends. It's
right.
about the problems you're trying to solve. So that's one company that has really impacted me on a personal level because they're an Egyptian-born company that actually grew and developed partnerships in the US and in Europe for their R&D and for their commercialization. And now they're ready to really, I think, thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't speak like Westerners, they didn't speak good English,
Yeah.
they didn't know how to pitch like the MIT people knew how to pitch, but they had a very sound, solid idea. I think another startup not a startup anymore, but there's a company called MetalX. And this is a company that is not necessarily what people would consider, you know, the cool tech or deep tech or whatever.
Right.
It's a mining and minerals company in Zambia. In Zambia. And they are growing across Africa. And what they are doing is very simple. They're trying to show that Africans can take ownership of their own minerals, can do their own mining, can create their own value in market, and can do it in a way that's carbon neutral. This company has really actually scaled across the continent and is ready to start going to other places in the world with an idea that we need to take control of our own minerals and stop handing it over to foreign companies in its raw form, but to rather create our own value added in our own countries, and it's doing so well. So I think I do have examples of companies that have gone completely global, but I don't think they're the really interesting ones that have touched me deeply.
I see. We have a very similar story when it comes to cotton.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what we've been doing. Cotton, yes.
Oh, yeah, so we're similar. Egypt had the same thing with cotton.
Right. And then we started, you know, to create clusters and, similar. Now, very interesting that you mentioned about the first startup that actually managed to commercialize their research because that is something that many countries find very challenging to actually do. But before we get to that, I want to zoom out from the founders level to an ecosystem. Now, as I said earlier, many countries, including Uzbekistan, launch all the
accelerators and incubators and
all
competitions.
The components, exactly. But very few, even though everything looks great on paper, very few countries actually manage to produce globally competitive companies. So what is the difference between the ecosystem that creates those globally competitive companies and countries that produce, you know, just a good collection of programs?
Yeah, that's such a good question. First of all, I want to say that, you know, ecosystems are not a collection of programs. Ecosystems are systems.
Okay.
And when we think of systems, systems have multiple ecosystems. They have multiple components, and those components are constantly interacting with each other.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in nature, right? And when things are working really, really well, everything blooms.
Right. Right.
But that requires that communication is happening.
Yes.
Amongst the different components of the system. And for any innovation ecosystem to work well, at MIT we believe in the 5 stakeholder model, and that includes corporates, risk capital players, of course entrepreneurs, policymakers, and universities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a lot of emerging markets, you have each of these stakeholders.
Yes.
But they're not necessarily working together. They're not necessarily having conversations together. And so we may have the components, but the components are not working together as a system.
Right.
And I think that's one element. The other element is this idea that we have of we need to start producing companies that scale globally.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an education issue, right? We're not telling people to dream big. We've been conditioned to dream small. And I can say this because as an educator in Egypt, or as somebody who's worked across Africa and the Middle East, and I worked with entrepreneurs through the Kuo Sharper Center from across emerging markets globally, from Latin America to Asia. Somehow we've all been conditioned to think small.
Yes.
But when you are in the United States, they are being taught to think globally.
Starting from one level.
Well, yeah, the world is their oyster. They're not saying, you don't tell an entrepreneur, oh, just build for Boston.
Right.
You're saying build from Boston to the world.
Right.
And that's very different. When we talk to our entrepreneurs, we're like, yeah, okay, build for the people in this city, or just build for your country. We're not teaching them how to build for the world. Mm-hmm. And that's a very different way of educating. Mm-hmm. And it's also a very different mindset.
Yeah.
Because that means that you need to be educating entrepreneurs on how they can create the kind of standards and systems that can easily be replicated, how they can think about what it means to be in one market and then go to the next market the next day. Mm-hmm. That's not how we have been educating entrepreneurs. Yeah. I do think we're getting there, we're doing better, but that's what the United States does. They tell their entrepreneurs, go build for the world. Mm-hmm. Build for 1 billion consumers. I have yet to see people in emerging markets say, go build for 1 billion consumers.
Whose responsibility is that? To educate young people in a way that they start thinking globally. Is that a responsibility of the society? Is it part of the culture, mentality, or is it something that with the will of the government can be changed or coordinated?
I think it's all of the above. I don't think the government can do this. It's not like, oh, the government is going to say, go build for the world.
Right.
It's not a magic wand. I think it starts from when you're in school, this idea of dreaming about something way bigger than yourself. I think that's a part of it. When we're educating university students about entrepreneurship, it comes from that.
Yeah.
It also comes from investors who are saying you need to be solving a problem that is global, that can actually scale, right? So I think it's a combination, all of the above, but I think it's also just mindset, culture, the belief that you should be building for the world. And there are so many problems that are global in scope. And then even when you're solving locally, there are many ways to make local solutions relevant.
Relevant to the world.
To the world.
Yeah, right. Now, in our audience, there are representatives of the private sector, there are startuppers, founders of existing companies, but also representatives of government agencies. Now, very interesting thoughts that you mentioned are very relevant to the government, I would say, especially the part when you say that even though the country has all the right components, unless you have the right communication among them, or that system of communication, it's, I wouldn't say worthless, but it's not effective. So but after this, I want to get to the same question, but from the founders or companies or startups' point of view. We have a startup that is dominating home market. It's making really good revenue, being successful, but when it comes to scaling globally, it stops. Why? I mean, what is it that prevents these companies from going global? Any recipe for this?
Well, what do you mean by global? Because sometimes when people say global, we think, has the company scaled yet to America?
Okay.
Or, but
at
so
least the neighboring
are you talking about,
countries.
is it scaling in the region or
Yeah.
scaling from
Not
beyond
just
this region
limiting
to the
itself only with Uzbekistan.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about Central Asia yet. I'm still learning. But I think when companies struggle to scale from market to market, it means that there are a lot of structural barriers that are still preventing them, not just mindset. I'm just saying, if you take an entrepreneur who says, I really want to scale.
Yeah.
Some entrepreneurs really want to scale, but then they meet a lot of obstacles because, like I said, we are not educating entrepreneurs on how to understand what it means to scale from one market to another and to navigate one regulatory system to another regulatory system and to be able to replicate operational systems. So that, I think, is an awareness and education piece. The other piece of it is, like, if I think about, you know, where I come from, or if I think about even Latin America or some parts of Southeast Asia, and I think, oh, why haven't we seen, say, an Egyptian entrepreneur scale to Nigeria?
Yeah.
Or why haven't I, even though they can, problems are similar. And then you really think about all of the structural barriers that exist for entrepreneurs to be able to scale or even trade with each other, because for such a long time we were not trading with each other. And we had all these, actually we had barriers to trade. It's cheaper for Nigeria to trade with America than it is for Nigeria to trade with Kenya.
Wow.
So that's where I say there are many structural barriers sometimes for preventing entrepreneurs from scaling beyond mind. Like, even if you have the mindset,
Yeah.
we have a lot of things to fix. Right? So it has to be also affordable for you to scale to another market. And that requires governments, right? That requires that governments really open up to each other, that they solve some of these challenges to being able to scale regionally from country to country. That's a little bit more on a policy level.
Right.
And then you need to work on the next layer of getting entrepreneurs to have the mindset and then really educating them on what that actually means in practice.
Yeah. Now, from the geopolitical point of view, what you described is exactly what happened in Uzbekistan with the new administration. One of the first things that our current president did was
open up.
Yeah, open up the borders and revive the relationships with our neighbors. And that had a tremendous effect on the economy of all the countries and, of course, on the trade. So I absolutely agree with you on that. But as you say, that is the part of the government. But when we look at that problem or that matter from the entrepreneur's point of view, I want to come back to that factor, the component that you mentioned, mindset. I understand that it's about educating our young people from their early ages to think globally, but at the same time, there is something called mentality. I read a very interesting research, Hofstede and Trompenaar, about five dimensions of culture. One of those dimensions was called uncertainty avoidance. this component, I don't want to, get bogged down with the other, but this is the most relevant, uncertainty avoidance. This component varies from one country to another. Countries where uncertainty avoidance is higher has respective implications on the society. That means that people of that society are more risk averse. They are they're harder to get to start something new. Whereas people or societies where this component dimension is lower, they said, heck, let's do it. That is the mindset. Plus, when I was in Israel, they mentioned something that makes very, very many Israeli companies successful: chutzpah. They call it chutzpah. What we know as duh. Our mayor, former mayor of Tashkent city, has some famous phrases, and one of them, as you all know, у тебя нет духа. What was it? Почему у тебя миллионы нет? Потому что у тебя духа нет. Дух. That's the phrase. Why? What is the reason? Why do you?
What does it mean?
That means, why are you not rich? That's because you don't have that chutzpah, the drive, or the spirit, or dерзость. There was a word, it's a little bit dare, ability to dare. There was one word. I will remember it. I will not go to sleep without it. But this is a very important component, as many people in Israel told me. Do you find this to be true or relevant when we talk about mindset of people? And is it something that entrepreneurs can do?
I think there are some cultures that really do encourage people to dare.
Yeah.
Israel is one of them. The United States is one of them. I don't know that the US is necessarily less risk averse than in Uzbekistan. I don't know that I would say that, but I do think that there is a lot more of the culture of you can attain your dreams if only you just go after them. All you have to do is try. There's definitely that. But I don't know that that's just it. It's a part of it.
Part of it.
But I think, the entrepreneurs that I have worked with that have done the best, it's not just that they are willing to take the risk and to dare.
Yeah.
It's that they're so in love with a problem. They're so passionate about a particular problem.
The problem
itself, that they can't stop thinking about it. And they're obsessed with it. And I think those are the ones that are very successful, and the ones that are able, building a company, especially a tech company, in any emerging market is never going to be easy.
Okay.
So you have to be really dedicated to something in order for you to make it through all of the obstacles that will be placed in your way in building a venture, because I think ecosystems that work really well don't have friction. They're at different points you will find it frictionless.
Yeah.
None of our countries are there yet, right? And so I think you need to have not just the ability the drive to do something and to kind of go against the grain, but also an extreme dedication to some purpose.
Can I ask you folks to raise your hand if you are working on a certain venture or thinking about it? Any startup founders among us, please raise your hand. Even if you have not started but are thinking, you have an idea, you haven't started. I'm not going to call you out on that, just so that I know. Okay, so about 30% of our audience are either founders or are thinking about starting their venture. Now, from these, my question is probably, not challenging, but someone adding to what you said. Being passionate about the problem, but what about being passionate about money? I mean, I want to start my business or my startup because I want to make a lot of money. I want to be financially successful. Yes, I do care about the pain point that I found. I do care. I wouldn't say I'm passionate, but I know this is a problem relevant not only to our country, to many other countries probably, but I also want to make a lot of money. So is that a problem if I'm obsessed with money?
No, money's a great thing.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, I can't say money's a bad thing, but I also think that people who start a business just to make money aren't the ones who are able to play the long game.
Are we talking about priority here? Money over passion?
I'm talking about money over actually the desire to solve a problem and to solve it at scale. I think, when you're talking about the co-founders of Google, I don't think that when they were working on this, they were thinking necessarily, I want to become billionaires.
They weren't.
They were thinking, this is something that we want to, they were obsessed with this.
Right.
Money came later.
It did.
So I think money is great. We all want to make money, and I think all entrepreneurs inevitably want to make money, but I think the best of them are more obsessed with the problem than they are with the money.
That makes sense. That does make sense. Continuing a bit that discussion about the mindset shift. Safe fail environment.
Yeah, so important.
How important is it?
So important.
Tell me about it.
It is so important to be able to easily fail without repercussion. Because if there are repercussions to failing, people are not going to dare to start a business. And I can say this because so many countries that I have worked with didn't, for example, one have a bankruptcy law.
Yeah.
And so if you started a venture and you failed, you could end up in jail. I'm not going to do that. Nobody wants that, right? The other piece of it is that nobody wants to fail and deal with the shame that might happen, because our cultures are not okay with, first of all, even just saying, at least in my country, when I was growing up long time ago, if I had told my parents I wanted to be an entrepreneur, they would have said, what? Go be an economist. I'm an economist, go be an economist. When I started my company, I had friends who said, why are you doing that? Why would you even start a company?
Yeah.
I think that starting a business is hard enough, but to have that fear of the shame related to failure because society doesn't allow for it is also very hard. So part of it is regulatory, and the other part of it is, where are we as a culture when it comes to accepting?
As a culture.
Yeah, when it comes to accepting failure. Are we going to shame someone for starting a business and then failing, or are we going to say, okay, get back up, go on to your next thing? So I think that's really very much a part of the culture in the United States, also in Israel.
Yes, it is.
Right? It's okay to fail. Fail and then take what you learn and start over again. And I also want to say that it is multiples more difficult for women.
For women.
Yes, because women never want to fail because there's a societal expectation that women will fail. And so that makes you even more scared to start a venture. I think I have, in all my time dealing with women entrepreneurs, this idea of growing a venture and scaling it is something they really struggle with because they're so afraid of failure.
Right, right. I'm just wondering, guys, representing Uzbekistan, being born in this culture, what do you think about our society in terms of its safe to fail culture? Do we have, does our culture allow us to fail? Any thoughts? No. Can it be a bit more specific? What do you mean by that? Yes, please. Can somebody, we will have a separate Q&A session, but because we're talking about this very sensitive piece of information.
This person has a mic.
Can I ask for the question?
Here.
Where?
You're here.
I also want to ask.
Yeah.
I can give the microphone. Then.
Sure. No.
So, I think that the first problem is since the childhood of Uzbek people, our parents told us to not to do something. The feeling of, fear is already in our body, and that's why most of the people fear to take a risk. Almost 90% of them. I know in all world it's like this, but in especially Uzbekistan, with our culture, the biggest problem is this.
I agree, and I have my example that I will share later. Yes, please.
Thanks for giving a talk. Also, I agree with that opinion that the first thing we do is advising with our parents, and 80 or 90% our parents are rejecting that idea, and from that our 80 or 90% of energy just die there, and there is no more I'm gonna make to, you can talk with friends and co-founders if you have. So in my experience, when I failed 3 projects, I would don't tell my parents until I got success, and then I'm gonna show them the results. Here's the results, and for this I just gave my 5-6 months, maybe year, 2 years for this startup, for this project that will help and solve this problem in the market. Thanks.
Now these two gentlemen are very right. They gave very relevant examples, and that is quite common to pretty much every family, and that stems from, I don't know, is it something common to our Soviet past, because that all has had an effect to our cultures too. For example, in my family, I have been born and raised as a very risk-averse person. And I did analyze why am I so risk-averse. And I do realize, I love my parents, okay? I love my parents, but I do realize that just like, I would say 95% of all the families, they raised us to be the best without any alternatives. So if I got A at school, it's great. But if I got C or D, I would be shamed, just like anybody else. I would be shamed. And that over years had an effect on me and many people.
Yeah.
So unless I have, this sense of safety if I fail, if I know that nobody will shame me, the society, and we're very, society-oriented society.
Yeah.
I will not do it.
Yeah.
My kid, 12-year-old kid, I noticed that he doesn't want to participate in those Olympiads. And I said, what? And I had a talk with him, and I realized that I am on an autopilot. I'm raising the same thing, exactly. that's when it struck me, what the hell am I doing? I'm doing the same mistake my parents, made when raising us. And now I am working on that. I told him, I forbade him to win an Olympiad. I said, until you finish your school, I do not want you to win any Olympiad. But for each participation, I will pay you 50,000 soms. Because for me, the important part is participation. If he fails, he will be upset, but I want him to get used to that feeling of success, to that feeling of failure, until that becomes a normal. When you play a computer game and your enemy shoots you and kills you, you don't get upset. You don't throw your computer out of the window. You say, okay, I'll do better next time. And you reload, you do it again. Why can't we do the same thing? Why can't we raise our kids so that they have the same approach to these things? And if I understand this right, this safety to fail has an impact on success or probability of having successful companies in a certain country. Is it not?
I mean, I think this shame issue of being scared to fail, I think it's a part of so many of our cultures,
Is
right?
it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely in my culture too. But I think that as ecosystems mature and as we see more entrepreneurs become role models, like when I think of, Egypt today versus Egypt 15 years ago.
Right.
No, I mean, you can't compare. You have a couple of unicorns, you've seen very successful entrepreneurs emerge, they're creating jobs. So this idea of working for a startup, also, even working for a startup was like, what are you doing, working for a startup? They're gonna go out of business, I'm sure. So even that has been a little bit normalized, right? Now, students graduate and the idea of working for a startup is a possibility. Versus 15 years ago, it was really hard to convince people to work for a startup. So I think as ecosystems mature and you see more role models, it becomes easier to say, oh, I want to follow that path of being an entrepreneur because you have local role models. And I think it's more important than the role model of the Googles and the Apples of the world. You need to have local role models. Because that means it's okay for you to go out there and do it. But I think the success, or I think the mark of a really mature ecosystem is when failure is just as normal as success. I mean, look at Donald Trump. He went bankrupt how many times? And he keeps coming back.
Doesn't he? Folks, when you think about a local role model, what is the first name, a person that comes to your mind? Come again? Alisher Usmanov. Well, he was raised here. He was born here. Jahangir Ortakhorjayev, okay, that's the ex-mayor I was talking about, okay.
Is he an entrepreneur?
Akmal Faizi, come again?
Is the ex-mayor an entrepreneur?
Oh yeah. One of the biggest ones, yeah. And that was the decision of the president to assign him as the mayor of the capital, because it is the business approach, it's the private sector mindset that was needed. And he's done a lot of work. Some maybe not, some people would not agree, but it's a matter of a separate discussion. But yeah, he was our mayor. Anybody else?
I have a question to ask.
We will have a separate Q&A question, but if it's relevant to what we're discussing, sure.
It's not relevant, but it's related to my
If it's not relevant, we will come back. We will have a separate Q&A session for this.
He wants to ask about a startup. I love it. I love the hustler.
Please write down the questions. We will attend them. Any other role models? Who? Right. No, that is true. That's true. What Dina is saying is the more we not just have local role models, but actually talk to them. And I'm really grateful to many of these people who were mentioned. They're very open to attend different guest lectures and meeting young people, and they do a great job in being a role model. But Dina is right. I mean, these people are closer to us than say
Larry
Sergey
Page.
Brin or Larry Page. Exactly. Even if you talk, watch the podcast with these folks, you always think these are folks somewhere there. But if you talk to someone who was born in the same city where you are, for example, or the country, you say, the motivation is different. So I totally agree with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add something? When I mostly think about role models, I think about high schoolers, because if you say a successful adult, which is around 50 years old, you expect it because he's had so much time and so much experience
that's
and
a good
age,
point, by the way.
legitimacy. But when you see a high schooler or a young
Being
person,
successful?
a successful young
Right.
person, you realize that it's been a part of their childhood, a part of their blood to be this way. And I think it actually helps students and young people to be motivated, because when I look at 40-year-old uncle who has done some things, I'm not really motivated. But when I see a 17-year-old boy who has opened a startup and is scaling it globally, I admire him, and I think that I can also be like him.
That is true.
I don't know many 17-year-olds who have scaled globally, but if you know one, I'd love to meet them.
Not 17-year-old, but a younger person who I would relate to in the age-wise would be a really good role model.
Yes. Well, Uzbekistan's a very young country, so hopefully you'll have that very soon.
That interesting conversation we started about commercializing. Now, again, not only Uzbekistan, many countries invest heavily in research, in universities, in scientific institutions. But when it comes to commercializing the research, it rarely happens. I mean, what is it that prevents research from turning into startup? And is there anything that the government or the society or private sector can do about it?
Yeah, here's something that I find very positive about Uzbekistan that I'm a little jealous of.
Okay.
Your ecosystem is still, I would say, nascent. It's still in the early days of really gaining momentum. But you're already talking about deep tech and commercialization. If I had said deep tech in my country just 10 years ago, they would have said, what?
Really?
What is that? So I think to be able to talk about it is something that's the first step, right?
Right.
Now, the name of my center is the Kuo Sharper Center for Prosperity and Entrepreneurship. And the reason why it's called Prosperity and Entrepreneurship is because we believe that prosperity that is sustainable and inclusive is driven by innovation and entrepreneurship. And when we say entrepreneurship, you can mean anything from like a small micro business to a large construction company, so brick and mortar. And then when we're talking innovation, you could mean anything from, a digital kind of copy-paste contextualized startup to a real deep tech startup, something that is started in a lab and that was commercialized. Honestly, I've thought about it for such a long time because it's such an important topic for me of why is it that our countries are not really exporting any innovation. We're just net consumers. That's what we are. We're net consumers of innovation. And why are we not? And I think it's because we have not really, in terms of thinking about how to create prosperity in our countries, you've not really focused on the incredible importance of that innovation capacity piece. The most successful countries are ones that are also driven by science and technology and really using science and technology to solve very significant challenges at scale. And that's, number one, a culture thing of we need to be taking our R&D and we need to go to market with it. Part of that is culture. Part of that is government incentives, as in government actually saying we need to see innovation in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we don't want it in publication form. We need products.
Products.
And these products are solving our national challenges.
Yeah.
That's what happened in the United States. People forget about that. Silicon Valley was created because the Department of Defense needed certain new innovations for problems, challenges they saw. And so they were funding R&D in particular areas, but they didn't want just a publication. They needed the product.
Right.
Right? So part of that is also government incentivizing commercialization. And then part of it is that is your ecosystem even focusing on scientists and researchers at all? You know, a lot of ecosystems completely forget about the scientists and researchers.
Yes.
They go straight to the business schools. And that's a mistake. You know, we need to be focusing on the business schools along with science and engineering and everything else and bringing them all together. So it's a combination. But I think for the most part, when we have thought about the economic development or prosperity of our countries, we don't think about the incredible importance of really investing in R&D and in seeing that R&D go to market. It's just not a part of our traditional development paradigms.
Yes.
And I say this as an economist, and I think we've done terrible harm in the world. You know, when the World Bank and IMF come and talk to us about how to develop our countries, all they talk about is monetary policy, fiscal policy. They don't say, you know, triple your investment in R&D and build your innovation. That's not there. That's not on the agenda because that would make us globally competitive. So part of it is also, I mean, Uzbekistan has always been an innovative country. You know, math was born here.
Yes.
How much was built on some of the innovations that came out of this country? So part of it is reclaiming that. And the other part of it is also making it a national priority to say we need to build a comparative advantage and we need to be exporting innovation as a way to becoming globally competitive. You know, not just thinking about, well, you know what I mean. We need to expand our scope of how to build up our prosperity.
Right. I just remembered that a very good example of research turning into a startup or commercializing really fast is again Israel, and that is
you know that Israel produces the highest percentage of deep tech startups.
Yes, yes.
They surpass America. So
right, that is because of the environment. So somebody comes up with an idea, it turns into a startup. So how would I conclude this? Environment, but again, you're right. The government has the right incentives there that turn research into a startup or commercializes any research. When I was very, very young, I was about 20 years ago, my mother had a friend, she was like 50 years old, and she was a scientist, a very deep scientist, very introvert. She had her own lab, and she had a recipe of a cream that cured cancer, at least skin cancer. She had, I saw like 20 or 25 cases of treating of photos before and after, and in the process. So cancer, she applies that cream and it dissolves. And I saw about 20 to 25 cases. I mean, that thing actually worked, but nobody cared. She knocked a lot of doors. She knocked on a lot of doors. My mother actually asked me to attach those photos and send to some big research funds, global funds. And of course, I use my yahoo.com email, of course, and I got no response. So that got nowhere. The woman, of course, has passed away many years ago, and the recipe, that thing, whatever it was, it went with her. So we will never know what that is. But again, that is because nobody cared.
Yeah.
The system was not there to take that, to notice that thing, to take it and say, let's take a look at this.
Yeah, but that's like I said, that is a culture thing. I think science for the sake of science is not the goal.
Yeah.
Science for the sake of betterment of society is the goal.
Yeah.
And in order for science to improve society, that needs to be commercialized, because otherwise it's just a publication on a shelf.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I have a couple of more questions, but I do realize that our folks here have many questions that I think is more important to give the floor to them and open the Q&A session. And if we have some time left, I will address you with those questions. But let us open the Q&A session. Yes, please, the gentleman over there.
First of all, welcome to Uzbekistan once more, Dr. Dina Sherif.
Thank
I'm Sardar Muhammadov, 19-year-old dropout student, currently co-founder and CEO of Ventry.
Sounds like success.
And we are building a platform that connects all founders, investors, and any person in the startup ecosystem by solving AI co-founder matching, AI advisor, and all of that tech events and accelerators like Luma. And what we're building is just a platform. Instagram is for like attraction or attachment, or LinkedIn's for the past experience, but Ventry is originally built for founders, better than Crunchbase or PitchBook. So my question is, how can we go to US market, and what are the top 3 advices that you can give me to speed up the process?
Why do you want to go to the US market?
Because currently there's more than 100 million startups and 400,000 investors in the US. That is our TAM, and it would be better if we go to the big market and like compete with the big sharks rather than these folks in here.
Because that's where everybody
So
goes.
I'm going to ask you the question I've been asking every single entrepreneur I've met so far in Uzbekistan. Why do you think you can compete with the big sharks in the United States? Why do you think you have the edge?
It goes from a background. I'm actually the bronze medal from mass competition, IMO, if you know. And I dropped out from Drexel University in Philadelphia. And I'm good at AI, and I have a strong team and strong advisors who already built unicorns. And what I'm going to do is to be a billionaire before 2030. That's the goal for me.
Money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Money's the goal. I think in order to compete in the US, you really need to be certain that you have a product that can compete with your competitors. And I think AI is such a saturated space right now. And I would say even in the US, we see AI companies fail, multiples fail on a daily basis. So it's an extremely competitive space. But if you think that you have a very strong differentiator for your product, then I would say find the right investor in the US to back you. And if you can do that, then you could probably have a good chance of competing there.
Can I take your contact to pitch, or like if you have time?
Yes, you can definitely take my contact. Actually, my contact is easily found everywhere on the internet.
But I'm afraid if you're gonna ignore if I Request on LinkedIn.
I won't ignore.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for the question. Another question?
And I
Yes, please.
appreciate the hustle. Well done.
Fantastic.
Hello, my name is Laila Yakshiboyeva. I'm an entrepreneur. I produce washable paper eco bags featuring Uzbek embroideries, Suzanes. But my question is about my main job. Like, I'm also a professor of entrepreneurship in several universities, including Turin. Yesterday you have been, but I had no chance to meet you. So we are launching one big project. Mr. Bahadur was talking about global scaling up, but I was going for more down to the deep, to the rural area. So our target is to teach 100 young people from rural areas where they have economic challenges, and we call it like economical gardening. Like, they can start from their region, solving their regional problem from their area, and then they can help to their neighbors, I don't know, women without job or disabled people, so more like a social project. So I have read a lot about MIT, and I have certificates from entrepreneurship classes, but I didn't know about your center. Is there anything we can collaborate? Are you open to work with Uzbekistan, with Uzbek projects, like a women empowerment and entrepreneurship? I will be glad if you talk a little bit about your center, if it's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm definitely here in Uzbekistan because we are keen on collaboration with the country and to support the ecosystem here. A little bit about my center, I guess we didn't really give space for that. So the Cool Shopper Center used to be called the Legatum Center for Entrepreneurship and Development. Legatum means legacy in Latin. And it started in 2007, and it was established by a Bangladeshi entrepreneur named Iqbal Qadir. And he started the first telecom company in Bangladesh. And when he started that company, what he saw was not just that he created jobs. He also saw that giving people access to a phone and a phone line could also create income and new businesses. And that led to prosperity in Bangladesh. And so he thought to himself, why is it that for decades people have been coming to my country and saying, oh, you need to have deeper austerity measures, reduce government spending, tighten your fiscal policy, be very careful with your monetary policy, but nobody said, you know, expand your private sector exponentially, create jobs, and really create innovative companies that will create new markets. Because what he did when he started this telecom company, it ended up generating new markets. And so when he exited and left Bangladesh, he went to the United States, and he said, I want to create a center that really promotes the idea of, if we want to achieve prosperity in emerging markets, we need to do that by really promoting entrepreneurship and innovation. Not just SMEs, because that's often what we are told, but to really build the fast, high-growth, innovation-driven companies that really transform markets, that create new systems, that solve problems at scale. And so he went to MIT, and they said, yes, you know, and he had a funder, which was Legatum, and so they agreed to allow him to build this center. And so over the years, the center has developed, I would say, I became executive director in 2019, and the center does multiple things. One of them is, of course, student programs, but we're very niche. We only work with students at MIT who want to build innovation-driven enterprises in an emerging market. So we actually don't work with any entrepreneurs who are building in the United States, because there are plenty of people who do that. And the other part of it was to educate students on the incredible potential of emerging markets. So, for such a long time in my country, in Egypt, we would say kind of what's happening in Uzbekistan. You should be scaling to the United States of America. And I do the reverse. I tell students, you should be scaling to emerging markets, because that's where the majority of consumers are, and that's where the highest potential is, and that's where all the opportunities are. And when I say opportunities, I mean we have endless challenges that need to be solved. And those challenges are in fact opportunities for any entrepreneur to come and solve. And so that's one side of it, is the student programming. The other side of it is actually working with countries to build stronger innovation ecosystems. So working on the policy side, working on creating awareness and building capacity of risk capital. We also have developed a program called the Foundry Fellowship, and that's really focused, and we hope to do something like that for Central Asia. We did this for Africa. And I say this because I think the best innovation ecosystems are driven by entrepreneurs. And I say that with caution, knowing that I'm in a kind of government building, but governments should not be driving ecosystems. They should be enabling them. They should be providing the right policies, and they should be de-risking what seems to be high risk, but they should not be driving the ecosystem. Entrepreneurs should be driving the ecosystem because they know best what is needed. And so the Foundry Fellowship is designed to work with entrepreneurs who have become very successful, who have already grown a business, to really work with them to help them understand their role in building innovation ecosystem within their countries, and then their role in connecting their individual ecosystems to other ecosystems in Africa. So if we have, a Foundry Fellow in Egypt, we say it is your also obligation not just to build your ecosystem, but to connect your ecosystem to an ecosystem in Zambia or in Nigeria. So to create that kind of regional integration driven by entrepreneurs. So we also do short education programs. We do early stage entrepreneurship program, growth stage entrepreneurship programs, and deep tech commercialization programs. And so we also work with scientists and researchers around how they can shift their mindset and become entrepreneurs and commercialize and really go down that path.
Yeah. Folks, I hope you realize that this is a very rare opportunity where an expert of Dina Sherif's level is here with us to take your questions. So please squeeze her like a lemon and make the best out of her visit. Yes, please.
Hello, thank you for coming. My question is about market. You said that vision is above money, right? And by this, I mean, in emerging markets like Uzbekistan, in developing markets like Uzbekistan, market is forcing to do money before investing, for example. Because I went to accelerators, investors, and pitched in front of specialists. They said, okay, your idea is really good, you can go globally, your idea is really important for us, but what about your MRR? And I said,
what about your what?
MRR, monthly revenue. I said, we are just starting, and this idea would really help our government and CIS, Central Asia governments. But they are saying, yes, we understand that, but show us your MRR before we can help you. I mean, how we can, young generation and other founders, change the market, because it's going very slowly, from your perspective.
I feel like I've been saying this all day long. It takes time for ecosystems to develop and for markets to develop, but I also want you to say I want you to remember one thing. I don't think you should call Uzbekistan a developing or emerging country. Uzbekistan has a GDP growth rate of 7.7%. That is extremely high in comparison to advanced economies. So I would say this already is a fast-growing market. I think that is number one to shifting mindset, is to really frame and use words carefully, that this country has an abundance of opportunities, and if you solve the right problems, you will bring the right returns. I think when an ecosystem is still in its early days, a lot of effort has to be made in educating everyone in the ecosystem, including investors. So if you think investors know it all, you're wrong. I think investors are wired to only think about, how quickly are you going to bring me back my returns? That's not necessarily the right approach, right? Because in our markets, it can take a little bit more time. But I think as entrepreneurs, if you really want to succeed, you need to really demonstrate that you have an extremely deep knowledge about the problem that nobody else has, and that your solution or your product will be consumed. So in other words, every investor, you don't have a company unless you have a consumer. Let's say that. And for investors, they want to know that you will be able to reach out to multiples and multiples of consumers. And so a part of the responsibility for entrepreneurs and startups, especially in the innovation and tech space, is to really demonstrate the quality of your idea, your deep understanding of a problem, and your ability to actually, I don't even want to say 1 billion consumers yet, but to show that you have the potential to scale to enough consumers that would bring them back their returns. Because that's how investors think. But we also need to do a lot of education for investors, because we adopt the same model, the same Silicon Valley playbook model, and they don't work, that just doesn't work in our countries. But we need to have the courage to say, we're not going to use that same model. We're going to think more about patient capital, because our market is still evolving. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the answer I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, next question.
Hello. Yeah, hi Dina. First of all, thank you very much. And I think that you've got so much experience that we can tap into, but I want to take my question a bit multidimensional, and put you to the spot. Okay, we are talking about the systems, and education is very important. In Uzbekistan, as you know, that we inherited the system from the Soviet times, and there are certain ways that we go about education. For example, one of the things that many people discuss maybe internally is like, for example, if your kid is going to the school, there are so many subjects that they need to cover, and sometimes you wonder if they need to be a bit more focused on few subjects and get good at those, or they should be learning so many things that eventually makes them, not good at none of them really. So if you look at the East, China and all those countries around those places, we know that there are so many great success stories with their kids and children and how they are doing well systematically, okay? Given your experience, have you ever saw any kind of themes, overall themes that maybe if you were a head of state right now and you have got unlimited funds to go and build a generation of entrepreneurs, okay? It's not that I'm disparaging anybody else. I'm assuming all those entrepreneurs will be good at many things, in many directions. How would you go about it, and maybe give us some action points here in Uzbekistan, maybe how we should at least think about it?
Oh my God, that's a question. That's a put you on the spot question. What would I as Dina do if I was head of state? I don't know what I would do if I was head of state in Uzbekistan, because I would lie if I told you that I understand this country well enough. But if I was like head of state of my own country, oh my God, I would take a bomb and throw it and blow up the entire education system. We also inherited an education system that I think no longer works for today, and that I probably think doesn't really work, never really worked for Egypt anyway. And I say this because a couple of nights ago, I had the daughter of one of my closest friends goes to Boston University. And she was over my house for dinner, and I said to her, "Oh, how did you do your first semester?" She's a freshman. "How did you do in your first semester?" She said, "I got terrible grades." And I was like, "What does terrible mean?" C's and D's. And I said, "Oh my goodness, why? You're a straight A student." And she said something that was so profound, and I thought, oh my God, if I just had the opportunity. The education system in Egypt is about rote learning. It's about memorization. It's not about critical thinking. It's not about soft skills, and it's certainly not about creativity. And that's why she struggled so much in an American system that rewards critical thinking, creativity. So for me, I think the most fundamental element that is required for entrepreneurship to thrive is critical thinking, creativity, and with that comes the willingness to take risk, right? And I think that would be, number one. I think number two, I would really change the way our national budgets are designed, and really think about how to build our economy kind of bottom up and build our innovation capacity, not just our entrepreneurial, traditional SME capacity, but to really think about where do I want my country to be 50 years from now, and what comparative advantage do I want to have that's going to make me globally competitive that nobody else will have, and then double, triple, quadruple down on building up that capacity. I think we need to have much longer term visions of what we want our countries to be from an innovation perspective. But that's just what I would do.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a problem of many countries where education system is primarily addressing the lower levels of the cognitive processes, like memorizing and understanding, not going, above these to things like applying, analyzing, comparing, and then creating.
Yeah.
So that
and
is
experimentation.
Yeah.
Like experiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you learn that failure is okay.
Exactly. Now, with the time pressing, we will probably take 2 more questions, and then we will wrap this up. Can you pass the mic over, please?
Pass the mic over to a woman for a change. Sorry.
That's a good idea.
Good evening, I'm Sabrina, and as a founder
A high school student.
No, middle school.
Middle school, even better.
And as a founder of a hardware startup, I've faced many obstacles regarding scaling the hardware products, because when I try to apply to different ventures and
What is your hardware product?
a new kind of wind turbine.
What's that?
Wind turbine. Wind turbine.
Wind turbine. Okay.
Oh, wow.
All right.
So when I try to apply to different ventures and investments, they ask me for a working prototype, but I need that money to make that working prototype. And it just goes on and on without stopping, because they want to see a working thing to invest in you, and you need money to make a working thing. And also another thing is, when making a mobile app, it can easily scale, because you just need one team who will make this app, and then it will work on its own. But on making hardware products,
hardware is
you need
tough.
employers
Yes.
who actually make it, depending on the audience that needs it and how many of the products you need.
I got your question. I think first of all, everybody needs to give a huge round of applause for a middle school student who is working on something that is in the deep tech space, right? Hardware is called hardware because it's hard. And we don't, at MIT, we don't really say deep tech, we say tough tech. We say tough tech because it is tough. and it takes time. So I think, well, you're in an interesting situation because I think you're very young, and so you have the opportunity to perfect your product. But this requires that the ecosystem here has investors who understand hardware, because it takes more time. It doesn't follow the same model as like a mobile app.
Right.
And it's also not tested. So in a lot of our markets, actually risk capital is not risky. We don't take risks. We follow what has already been proven. And that's not the best of places to be. You're just playing it safe, and it's no longer risk capital if you're not taking risk. So I think for someone like you, sadly, you have to wait for the ecosystem to evolve, or you need to really find yourself a good angel investor who's willing to play the long game with you. And I would recommend that you go down that path. And you're here in IT Park, tap into their network. Find an angel investor who might be interested in supporting something that isn't as easy as a mobile app, You're doing something way more difficult, and so you also need to find yourself a special type of investor. And I know that's not easy. I know this because in most countries we work in, it's really difficult to fund hardware. And I go to venture capital funds all over emerging markets, and I say, why are you not investing in hardware? And they say it's too hard. That's not a good enough excuse. We need to push our ecosystems to evolve at a faster rate. And I think that will come by seeing middle school students like you pushing the bar and saying, why aren't you investing in me? I have what could be a really good product, and you should take a risk on me.
Plus, if I may add, startups is a hot topic, is a very high priority for the government, for everyone. So I would knock on all doors. Talk to the director of your school. Talk to the university. Write letters to the president, to the prime minister. Something will happen, trust me.
Yeah.
Especially you being a high school student,
middle school
student with this startup idea, that is your advantage. You know what I mean? Talk to journalists.
Come talk to Jamila up here. Raise your hand, Jamila.
Yeah.
Come talk to her after.
There's so many doors. You don't know where you will find an opportunity.
It is hard. They call it tough tech, deep tech, hardware, because it's tough. And it means you have to put in way more effort to raise capital.
Yeah. I think that's a great story to cover as a separate article. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. And our last question, please.
Yeah. Hello, welcome to Uzbekistan again, and thank you for the insights. My question is, should startups focus on global markets on early stages, or dominate the local market first?
Dominate the local market first.
And why?
Because that proves to the rest of the world that you can do it. So if you can make it in your own market and scale from there, that's just my opinion. You have to first show that you have a product that works, and the best way to show it is here in your market. Unless you're building for another market.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I think we could continue this discussion for another 5 or 6 hours, that's for sure. But with time pressing, I want to ask you folks to join me in thanking Ms. Dina Sherif for this wonderful time and opportunity.
Thank you.
Dina, thank you very much for your time, for your visit, and for this absolutely fantastic discussion. I think these are the kind of discussions that actually help ecosystems mature, because at the end of the day, every country will face or faces a choice, whether to build companies that are big at home or build companies that are relevant to the world. And with your suggestion, that may be the right sequence, as you just suggested, dominate the home market and then go global. So Folks, I want to thank you all for being here today with us, and I call you all to help us build this ecosystem where the next global company from this region is not an exception, but an expectation.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much, and have a wonderful evening.
You're such a good